I've been using iPhone for the last 10 years, and using the Pixel 8 Pro for the last few weeks has been a great phone experience. The AI features on this phone and the camera are phenomenal. So you would think that after 10 years of iPhone, switching over to an Android device would be a pain in the ass, but that actually wasn't the case. I actually wanted a fresh start, so I didn't transfer over any of my apps, none of that. The only thing I wanted to keep was my photos, and I was already using Google Photos on my iPhone, so you know, switching that over and getting everything synced was great. So the phone does come with a USB-C to USB-A adapter, so if you do want to transfer all your stuff from an iPhone or I guess any other phone, like I said, I didn't want to, I wanted a fresh start. So if you saw my first impressions video, you know I really like the design of this phone, and over the past few weeks, I still feel the same way about it. If anything, I like it even more with the rounded corners. It feels very comfortable in your hand. And this is the bigger phone, and it's bigger than my iPhone 14 Pro Max, and it's still more comfortable to hold. That phone has straight edges and it's very heavy. This phone is a lot lighter. So overall, this phone just feels great. I really like it, just holding it. I don't have any issues with it. One of the things I noticed when I picked up the phone was the little rattling that was happening, but I think that might be the camera system. I'm glad though that it's not the build quality and it's a functional, you know, it's a stabilization, so it's a functional system in the phone itself. Now I'm okay with the rattling being there. Long term though, I don't know how this phone will hold up, like the durability, because this phone fell, I didn't even drop it, so it's not like it fell like from 5'10", you know, or chest level, whatever that is. It fell from a coffee table that's maybe 1.5 foot tall. I'll put a picture in it so you can see the height. And when it initially dropped, I didn't even realize it was cracked, but then I took a closer look and it was chipped at the bottom there. It's not as durable as the iPhone for sure. I know that much, but yeah, I don't know. Long term, we'll just have to see. Another thing is that the visor does collect a lot of dust above and below. I think if you just curve the visor where it meets the screen, that might fix it, but I don't know how it'll affect the durability, or it'll make it easier to like damage. So let's talk about the user experience. And being an iPhone user for 10 years, switching to this phone was not bad, as I mentioned earlier. The phone has some character. There's a bunch of little things, like when you plug in your phone, it'll have like a charging animation and it'll tell you how long till the phone is fully charged, and if you're supercharging or just, you know, regular charging. It just makes the phone a lot more user-friendly, and it's a nice change from an iPhone, I'm not gonna lie. One of the things I tried turning on was high contrast text, but I quickly ended up turning that off because I noticed that once I would jump into the Gmail app, which is one of my most used apps. So you know how your unread mail is a little bit more bold and then your read mail is not? This kind of blended the two together, and I was having trouble distinguishing my unread mail from my read mail. I wanted to keep that on because on the home screen and stuff, I like the way the text looked, but just in certain apps that would happen. So I ended up turning it off. One of my favorite things that I noticed was whenever I went to, and this is probably not specific to the Google Pixel, it's an Android thing, but whenever you go into your quick settings and you go to adjust the brightness, it'll temporarily hide your quick settings, and it'll take you into whatever app, or it'll display whatever app you're running, and it'll show you what the brightness looks like as you're adjusting it, which to see what the actual app will look like in certain lighting conditions, wherever you are, wherever location you're in. It's a nice feature. Apple, take notes. Another thing I really like that I wish Apple would copy is that, let's say I'm using the YouTube app, for example, and I pause the video and then I minimize to something else and I go into my home screen. On iPhone, it'll completely forget what app I had open. So if I try to, for example, raise the volume, it'll just raise the entire system volume rather than just the YouTube app that I had previously open. So let's say then I then go into Spotify and I want to play a song or something, then that would just take over. But on this, if you open the quick settings, you can scroll between them and adjust them individually and just play like the YouTube video, or you can adjust the YouTube video and Spotify independently from one another. Oh, and I'm not gonna cover the thermometer because honestly, I didn't use it at all. I think I opened the app and I like started playing with it, but I just never had a use case for it. Maybe down the line if they make it available to like measure human temperature, I'll make a separate video, but as of now, I just had no use case for it, so yeah, sorry. And the last thing I want to talk about is the speakers, and they're really good. I still don't think they're better than the iPhone 14 Pro Maxes, and probably not the 15 Pro Maxes either, but they sound really good and they can compete with them. I just prefer the iPhone. But that's not to say this is bad. I have no problem just playing music straight out of my phone and enjoying it. It's good. I do like that the power button and the volume rocker are both on the right side of the phone, because I'm usually using my phone with my right hand anyway, so it's easier to click with my thumb. But screenshotting is a little bit of a pain. But I'm glad they have the double tap feature where you can just double tap the back of the phone and screenshot, because pressing the volume rocker and the power button at the same time is a little bit uncomfortable. And the Google Assistant. It is so good, and it's made me a lot lazier when using my phone, but it's so convenient. So one of my favorite features is the summarize, where I won't even have to read a web page. It'll give me some bullet points, and then I can decide off those bullet points if I want to continue reading or not. But even in other situations, because the Google Assistant does such a good job at just picking up my voice and it's very accurate, that even across other apps, when I'm on YouTube or just even Google, doing anything, instead of just typing it, and I know this is across all devices, but it just works so well that I'm more motivated to use it. Instead of typing like whatever I want to search, I'll just hit the microphone button and I'll speak into it. It's so convenient, and you don't notice how bad Siri is until you start using Google Assistant. And anything I want to research or just look up really quickly, I'll just hold the power button and then, or say, hey Google, and look, it's so fast. Like, it just caught everything I just said. It's so good. The display on this phone is the brightest that I've ever used across any device personally. I'll be outdoors with the sun right over me, and if I turn it all the way up, I can still see my screen. But I normally don't use it that bright anyway, because I don't know if I'm sensitive to light. If I'm outdoors in sunlight, of course I will. But like when I was testing the camera, it was pretty sunny outside and I could still see my screen. And one thing I did find was that the adaptive brightness was very aggressive when it was switching. And I actually ended up turning it off because it was almost too aggressive. I feel like it doesn't do a great job at adjusting for the light around you. And this might be because I'm sensitive to light, but sometimes I would just prefer it to be a little bit dimmer. It's usually on the brighter side too. So sometimes I would like my screen to be a little dimmer than what it was adjusting for. So eventually I just started doing it manually, but that might be something personal rather than like an issue with the phone. I just prefer it to be a little bit more dim than bright. All right, so let's talk about the best thing about this phone, and that's the camera. So you can launch the camera just by double pressing the power button, which is, wow, that's a weird angle, which is even faster than pressing it on the lock screen. But I'm glad that they separated the photo and the video into two separate tabs, because within each there's already a lot of settings, so it just makes it a lot easier. So immediately I set the phone to shoot 50 megapixel raw photos because I like having the flexibility in post. But eventually I just set it to JPEG because I was happy with the way it looks straight out of camera. And the photos do look very processed, because they are, especially when you have the sky in your frame. I find that that's usually, the sky gives it away a lot because it just looks so good that you know it's not natural, it's doing some processing work. And you know it's a very processed photo because if you switch to the Photos app fast enough after taking a picture, not even fast enough, you don't even have to rush to open the app, take a photo and then go try to view the photo. You'll have to wait and you'll see the photo processing in real time. And the pro settings that are exclusive to the Pro are very nice. I haven't really used them that much, but I'm glad they're there because I'm sure I will want to down the line. You can adjust ISO, shutter, all the fundamentals that go into taking a picture. They're all there. So the colors are very vivid and saturated and they pop, and it does a good job at exposing for faces as well. And the camera constantly reminds you to hold still. You'll see a message with like a stabilizer telling you to hold still, even if you are. I feel like this is just default at this point. It always pops up. And while the standard camera is great, and so is the ultra wide, I was shockingly surprised how good the 5x optical zoom was. But even beyond that, the digital zoom goes all the way to 30 and it's really good. Like, the images look very clear. I feel like the sweet spot is around 15 to 20 when you're digitally zooming, but you can go all the way up to 30. But I'm gonna show you some pictures of how far I was from some subjects, and then zooming into 15 to 20 times, how crispy, how much detail it still managed to keep in the photo. And the nighttime photos also do look good. It essentially keeps your shutter open for a few seconds, letting in more light. And then it does all the Google magic processing to keep your image stable and things sharp. One thing I'm not a fan of though is the portrait mode. It's a hit or miss. Sometimes it'll grab your subject and it'll keep it sharp. But a lot of the times I feel like in the process of trying to blur your background, it'll also blur your subject. I'll throw some examples on the screen. But the thing is that you can't undo it, so whatever you got, that's what you're stuck with. Unlike with Apple, you can put it in portrait mode and it'll keep all that information so that you can tweak it afterwards if you don't like it. So if you want to just keep the regular photo, for example, and just completely remove the portrait effect, you can. But on here, you're stuck with whatever you got. But what I prefer to do and what I recommend others to do is just take a regular photograph using the already great cameras, and then using their blur function afterwards, you can make it a much more subtle effect. and kind of give it that portrait look, because at least using that method, you won't ruin the photograph and you can keep copies of that and make the effect much more subtle and it'll look better anyways. Even with the blur function though, I feel like when you try to make it too intense, it starts to fall apart too. So I think the best thing to do is just add the blur function afterwards, but keep it very subtle, and that'll give you the best results in my opinion. One of the most disappointing things I found was trying to edit raw photos in Lightroom, and it's only with the raw images. Whenever I transfer them over from Google Photos into Lightroom, it just gives it this hazy look. Like I don't know what it's doing, but it only happens with the raw photos because since the phone takes raw and JPEG at the same time, I tried transferring the same photo, one raw and one JPEG, and the effect would only happen with the raw photo. And it's only with Lightroom. It doesn't do that within the Google Photos app. And that's just my preferred editing software, Lightroom is. So it's a bummer that I can't do it, but thankfully since I use Google Photos, I can just shoot the photo on the Pixel and then sync it to Google Photos and edit it on my iPhone, which does open the photograph just fine. The same photograph, same file, I'll just have to open it on my iPhone instead, even though I shot it on my Pixel. I tried troubleshooting this, I couldn't find an issue. If anyone has any tips or knows why this happens, please let me know. However, one of the editing features that does work well is the Magic Editor and Eraser straight on the Google Photos app. It's not perfect by any means, but for memories and just enhancing, it's not for professional work, right? For that, you're gonna wanna do it on a separate software and you're gonna have to do it manually. But for a lot of memories and for things that are just gonna be on social media and whatnot, it works, it does a good job. For the most part, when you give it a subject, it does a good job at detecting it. The shadows sometimes are hit or miss. It's not perfect. Sometimes it'll completely remove the shadow and it'll detect it and it'll do a good job. Other times it'll struggle more and you can keep trying to tweak it, but sometimes it just won't get it perfect. There's also a bunch of AI features like giving your photograph a stylized look or changing the time of day to like golden hour. I didn't really use this that much. It's just not for me, but I did end up taking one of my photographs and giving them that stylized look. And I ended up using them as my wallpaper, if it focuses. You know, some people can still get creative with this, but it's not perfect. You can like switch your sky, of course, and switch it to a different time of the day. It's not perfect, but you can work with it. All right, so moving on to video. The quality of the image that comes out of videos is also very good. I feel like it's not as good as stabilizing as an iPhone, for example, but it's okay. Yeah, so right now it's at 4K, so no stabilization on it. And I'm just walking around like I was previously. So maybe I'll put these side by side and then we'll compare them. But yeah, let's see what the difference looks like. So now I'm testing the active stabilization and I'm just walking around holding the phone out in front of me. And this only works at 1080p in 24 or 30. So it's not gonna work at 4K and it's not gonna work in 1080p at 60. By the way, I hope I'm in the frame because I can't see it right now. I'm using the back camera. But I just wanna see if this looks any different. But similar to photographs, it does a really good job at exposing for your face. I'll throw in that same clip I used in my first impressions where you can see it properly exposing it. So half the battle with good video is having good audio to go along with it. And with the audio eraser, you can tweak it afterwards, after you shoot your video. But there's also a voice enhancement that you can toggle on before even shooting the video. And I'm gonna show you what both of those look like. But first, here's an extreme example of me in an open field with a plane flying over my head and just teams practicing and kids running around. My voice doesn't sound perfect, but the fact that that was such an extreme example and you can still kind of understand what I'm saying, in certain situations, again, for keeping memories, enhancing them, I think it does a really good job. One of the best features on the Pixel 8 Pro is the audio eraser. Right now I'm in an open field with a plane flying above my head and a bunch of people running around. And this is what it sounds like after post-processing. So the way the audio eraser works is that it'll detect all the noises and sounds in your image, whether that's vocals, nature, you know, the list goes on. And then from there, it'll give you individual sliders where you can adjust the vocals, the nature sounds, or just whatever it detects as noise. And you can adjust them individually from one another. So you can even remove the vocals if that's what you want, or whatever, you know, whatever vocals it can detect, or maybe just the nature sounds, or maybe just the noise sounds alone. So now I'm gonna show you an example with the voice enhancement feature on. This was toggled on before I even started filming, so it's not even, I didn't tweak it at all afterwards. So I'm walking through the city and I'm using the voice enhancement feature. There's like cars and people running around. I'm using the front facing camera and then I'm gonna try it with the back facing camera. But I'm not going to tweak this using the magic eraser features. This is just what the phone is going to get with the feature turned on before I started recording. So there's like a trumpet or something in the background too. So actually, let me see if I could get it. And then there's cars running around, driving around. But yeah, there's a guy playing a trumpet over there. So yeah, now I'm gonna go ahead and switch to the back camera. All right, so this is with the back camera. And again, I'm not gonna tweak anything afterwards. This is just with the voice enhancement on. Yeah, the reason I'm testing this is because I don't know if it's gonna be different, you know, facing the phone a different direction. I just wanna see if the audio is any better or worse with the front or back facing camera. And the last thing is battery life. So the battery life hasn't been an issue for me. It pretty much lasts me all day. Again, I have been using 2 phones, but even when I use mostly the Pixel 8 and didn't use my iPhone as much, I would still get about 30% battery left. But the thing is, I also charge my phone whenever I can throughout the day. That's just a habit I picked up because I don't like not having my phone on. But regardless though, it is a long battery life. I think the iPhone still has a little bit better battery life, but still good enough. And it's nice though, because you can go into the phone settings and there's battery diagnostics. So you can troubleshoot things like why your battery is draining so fast, like what apps are using, you know, the most battery, overheating issues, and just general battery issues. You can do them straight on the phone, just go into your settings. So overall, I'm very happy with this phone, and I was considering downgrading to the Pixel 8 because since I'm using 2 phones, I don't really need the size and the battery to be that amazing. I mean, I feel like the size on the Pixel 8 is more comfortable in your hand. Same thing with the iPhone. So I'll be downgrading phone sizes going forward, but after using the 5x telephoto, it's mostly the digital zoom that actually really surprised me. I just don't know if it's worth the $300 extra. That's still something I'm gonna have to consider, but for it being a digital zoom, by the way, the 5x optical zoom is good, but I wouldn't say, if it was just up to the 5x optical zoom and from 5 to 30 wasn't so good, I probably would have just gone with the Pixel 8. But considering that it's so good, now I'm actually thinking about just keeping the 8 Pro instead of the downgrading to the 8. But $699 or $999, it's $300, it's a big difference. But yeah, if you don't care about that stuff, the Pixel 8 does seem like a better deal. Switching over from iPhone to Android actually wasn't as bad as I thought. That's partly because this phone is so good. It's such a good phone. If you enjoyed this video, give me a like and subscribe if you want to see more in the future, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.